The last thing we talked about in class was this word problem that we started on. This is your homework. And read over question number 1. You drink a cup of coffee. The amount of caffeine in your body is given by this equation. And since this is a fraction less than 1, I know that the caffeine is going to be decreasing. So if I was going to look at the graph of that, it's going to look something like that, right? And I'm looking at time, which is the number of hours, so time in hours, versus caffeine, which is going to be in milligrams. Okay, but nevertheless, they give us the equation. And if it makes it easier for you, just think of that as C equals. So C as a function of T. So if they ask how many milligrams of caffeine was in your body initially is when no time has passed. So T is equal to 0. So let's plug in 0 for T. So we have 100 times 1/2 to the 0 over 5, which is just 1/2 to the 0. We know that anything to the 0 is equal to 1, so this is just 100 times 1, which is 100 milligrams, which is not a surprise since we know that this is always our starting point. After 5 hours, though, we need to plug in 5 for T, right? They're telling us 5 hours, T is 5. So C will be 100 times 1/2, and we'll plug 5 in for T. 5 in for T. So that gives us 5 over 5, which is just 100 times 1/2 to the first. 1/2 to the first is just 1/2, so 100 times 1/2, and that's going to give us 50 milligrams. Likewise, after 15 hours, T is going to be 15. So let's just plug it in. 100 times 1/2 to the 15 over 5. That's going to give us a 3. 100 times 1/2 to the third. And I'd have to use a calculator, but 1/2 to the third is 0.125, which when we multiply by 100 is 12.5 milligrams. And for D, this gets a little complicated. How many hours will it be? So they're not giving us T. They're giving us 25 milligrams of caffeine. So what we need to do is plug in 25 for C now. So instead of C is 100 times 1/2 to the T over 5. Now I know this is going to be 25. So 25 is 100 times 1/2 to the T over 5. And now we need to solve this equation. So let's divide both sides by 100. Get rid of that. We need to peel away, so T is by itself. That's going to give us 1/4 is 1/2 to the T over 5. And here we have an exponential equation. So I'm going to rewrite 1/2 as 2 to the negative 1 to the T over 5. And I'm going to rewrite 1/4 as 2 to the negative 2. If the bases, so let's simplify this. When we're raising to a power, we multiply exponents. So this gives us 2 to the negative T over 5. And now we have the same base, so we can say that the exponents are the same. So negative 2 equals negative T over 5. I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. So we get negative 10 is negative T. So then T is going to be 10 hours. And that's the answer to that last part of question 1.